Hello everyone, it's M. Welcome back to the Eternal Card Breakdown. Today we're going to be reviewing Raniya Never Caught, the new promo for today, the 20th of October. As always, this is a card that is available for free. You simply have to win a game of Versus in Eternal, and if you do, then you get a copy of it, up to 4 copies for the rest of the week. So keep that in mind. This is a fancy new free card to help spice up the meta a little bit, and let's go ahead and talk about it. It's primarily, I believe, an expedition card, but it does have some interesting applications just everywhere just by being a small value proposition. So this is Raniya Never Caught, 3 costs 3/2, stealth. When Raniya is revealed on the enemy turn, i.e. if Raniya is hit by some sort of spell or anything that the enemy does to reveal the card, if she blocks something and then causes herself to reveal that way, then she gets to create and draw a sabotage. The enemy player discards a spell of their choice, or spell or attachment of their choice from your hand. Her ultimate is that at the start of her turn, you reveal Raniya to draw a Thieves' Pick, which of course is the 2-cost, 1/0 unblockable for double shadow, that also has Spellcraft 3 play a Pilfer. And finally, let's go ahead and get that Pilfer up here. Pop. Okay. So yeah, drawing the top card of the enemy deck for 3 is not amazing, but Thieves' Pick was never an exceptionally amazing card. However, it does provide unblockability, which happens to be like a really useful function. So let's talk about Raniya a little bit. Raniya is caught all the time. This is definitely a card that basically gets torched or removed pretty frequently, and as a result of that will also create and draw a sabotage. So that's kind of an interesting value proposition. You get an extra card as a result of that, but because your opponent is very likely to spend a spell to destroy the stealth unit, at least as far as the stealth meta I know exists, revealing the card can, of course, create some issues. If you create the sabotage might be dead against your opponent's Annihilate, and then, or like your opponent's already played Annihilate. Once they've played spells out of their hand, they have less likelihood to have more spells in their hand. So there's some weakness there, but overall, this is a card that will always draw you a card, and typically that card will be in some way useful to you. Having a sabotage late in the game is actually really handy because it allows you to fish for tricks and ensure that nothing is going to wreck some particular plan that you have for the turn. It allows you to basically control what's going on in the battlefield and give yourself a lot of reliability and certainty in terms of dealing with your opponent and getting like a lot of aggression going on. And early on, which Raniya does come down on 3, the card will probably be revealed on the same turn. At that point, the sabotage is still probably likely to be useful, very likely to hit, and when that happens, you're going to get relics, you're going to get spells, and as a result, Raniya is a card that you played that soaked a removal card, drew you a card, and then caused that card to discard another player's card, although because you have to spend the sabotage, that only puts you 2 cards up. Still, it's a pretty solid card advantage engine in that respect, and that's something to keep track of. The neat thing about Raniya is that the ultimate ability also gives you card advantage, because if you actually like manage to hold on to Raniya for 1 turn, you get the Thieves' Pick, which then you can play at 5 to play a Pilfer. So that's an extra card that also draws an additional extra card off the top of the enemy deck. Now, in both these cases, the card advantage is slightly worse, like mathematically, than a regular extra draw. Like a sabotage is only going to hit some of the time. A Pilfer gets you typically a weaker card because it's not going to be a part of your general deck, although certain decks do have a strong tendency to counter themselves. And Thieves' Pick itself is not a particularly stat-efficient card, so none of these are necessarily adding up to just a significant amount of card advantage, but since both options actually give you 2 cards worth of advantage under the best of circumstances, you are typically pretty likely to be playing these cards to get like a decent leg up over the course of a long game, which is really nice because that's sort of where Raniya fits in. She's a 3-cost character that you can play to bridge the gap between your 4s and your 5s, your big expensive cards, and then basically have tools to both excel in the late game card advantage and also just be a little bit better when you have like big units and other advantages down on the board. If you're running like an Argent-Boar Ringmaster or a big Sentinel or anything that attacks and deals extra damage, Raniya is notably like capable of carrying like that Thieves' Pick is not just for Raniya, she can put it on just about anything that's big and do some pretty wild stuff with it, and that's like a pretty important aspect of the strategy. Thieves Pick is one of those cards that is typically not good enough to play an expedition on its own, but having it as a free card is extremely beneficial, particularly when you're playing Big Shadow or when you're playing into the mid-range. So this feels pretty strong in those respects. And in a more aggressive strategy, 3 damage is really not too bad. Getting a Sabotage early, which you're likely to see a lot of removal if you're playing very aggressive, is going to be pretty decent, and the Thieves Pick allows you to push across extra damage, so you can get extra value that way as well, and other ways to win the game, which is really, really important. So this is a decently rounded package. Raniya is not a super stat efficient unit and is just like an okay stealth card, but is pretty stat efficient for a stealth card, to be sure. She fits really, really well in the slot, and then like when that happens, she is just capable of giving you some additional power in the parts of the game that you need them the most, specifically the ones where you're trying to win the game in the late against any sort of opponent trick, or in any sort of situation where your opponent has a lot of board position. Depending on which side is revealed, they're helpful in different ways. Obviously, you don't have a lot of control over which side is revealed. You're very likely to get the Thieves Pick if your opponent leaves you alone, and very likely to get the Sabotage if your opponent is more active. So most of the time this is definitely going to like suit you a little bit better, but keep in mind that it does sort of technically offer the opponent a choice. Stealth cards are really interesting like this because while opponents do have choices, they don't have all of the information needed to make good choices. So in very, very high level metas, your opponent's more likely to actually pick the side that's going to hurt them least, but for the most part you're going to see a lot of mistakes, and especially if you're playing a lot of other stealth cards in your deck, or if your deck's contents are not known to your opponent, you're probably going to see whatever it is that you want be the thing that you get more frequently than not, which is pretty nice. Overall, I'm pretty fond of this card. It gives you an opportunity to play Thieves Pick, which Thieves Pick is a really wonderful card if you are playing with a lot of aggressive options. It's just not a good card to draw, so just being able to basically turn any of your bombs into an unblockable monster while also getting some extra card advantage back later in the game is just super strong, and that's like a really, really fun play style. This is one of the things about Eternal that like really works out very well, is this ability to create certain cards, because some cards that are not so great can often get thrown in and like basically like added to your deck. Even if they're not great, you get to play with those cards anyways, because other cards that are pretty great get to generate them, and so it leads to some pretty fun play patterns. As a 4/2 unblockable, Raniya is not wearing her own Thieves Pick very well, which is kind of notable because she doesn't really steal very often, but it's a decent amount of damage if you want to go aggressive, and you can of course follow up with like an extra 2-drop on turn 4, so like Argentport Ringmaster or something like that in Throne if you're trying to play aggressively. I think that like that's got some interesting potential, but by and large I would say that this definitely fits a little bit better in mid-range stealth or control decks that want to really like sort of edge out your opponent through slow card advantage, and just play some units that can block pretty early and do some useful things in that respect. So that's my sort of summary of Raniya. I hope you enjoyed. Definitely seems like a cool character. Love the art on this one. This is a familiar pose. I believe that we've had at least one character scaling a rope before, but cool haircut, interesting tattoos, like just fascinating art, and just really pretty well drawn, and theorized it looks like the standard Eternal art style in a lot of ways, and it's very interesting to see. So I think it's an awesome card, and definitely looking forward to picking up a couple of copies of this. So that's it for me. Thank you so much for watching, and if you want to support the stream, we're going to be streaming tonight, Wednesday. It's been a little bit, but we are finally capable of streaming again, so I'll be running that stream at Twitch TV/LocoPojo. Also, I've been putting up some Arkham runs on my alternate channel, M Plays, so if you are interested in those, feel free to head on over there. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Cheers!